Hi, welcome. I'm Lorelai of Namasturm Yoga. This is the second in the series of Yoga for the Absolute Beginner. So if you've already done part A, here we have part B. Let's get started. So once again, we'll start sitting on the mat as we did before. Remember, this is Sukhasana or easy pose. However, if this pose is not so easy for you, I'm going to give you one recommendation or option, and that would be to use a yoga block. You may or may not have a yoga block just laying around, so you could use something else like a book or even like a folded up blanket. But if you find that when you sit, your back starts to kind of hunch and you have a hard time leaning forward, you can sit up on a block and that will help set you up so that your hips naturally align underneath your shoulders, or shoulders over hips, however you want to think about it. So you remember a little bit last time when we talked about alignment and how the tailbone can tuck, or the tailbone, the tail or the hips or the pelvis can tilt. And how when we're standing, oftentimes we want to think a little bit of tuck or tailbone drop down. But when we're sitting, oftentimes we want slightly the other thing, a little bit more tilt. So sitting up on something can sometimes help to tilt you forward. So if that helps with your alignment, go ahead and try it. But if you feel like you can comfortably sit on the floor without the block, shoulders stacked over hips, then fantastic. And here we sit. B is for breath. At the start of most practices, we can just sit, close the eyes, and notice the breath. So let yourself do that. This is a very simple practice. We breathe all the time, and mostly we pay no attention, and we really shouldn't have to pay attention all the time. We do it constantly. It would be way too distracting. But here, let yourself notice the depth of your breath, the pace of your breath. What other parts of the body move as you breathe? Do you notice your chest, or your shoulders, or your abdomen? Notice the temperature of the air as you inhale, and notice if that's any different when you exhale. Just let yourself become aware. Now, breathing naturally, you're probably not going to be breathing consistently, so you may not feel like there's a particular rhythm. You might find there's pauses between your breaths, and that's okay. That's natural. That's fine. As we start to move into yogic breathing practices called pranayama, which literally prana means life force and ayama is to extend or to hold. So the pranayama is a controlled breathing practice. We're going to control the breath and do something other than what we do in natural breathing. The first practice I'm going to introduce you to is Ujjayi breath. This is done in almost all yoga classes, and sometimes we try to practice it throughout the entire class. So it's kind of a foundational breathing practice. Ujjayi practice means, or Ujjayi pranayama, it means victorious breath. And we can start to learn it just by thinking of like how the way we would breathe if we were going to try to like fog up a window or a mirror. So you can start that now. And these are just short little puffs just to kind of get you used to the idea. However, now we're going to try to extend that. So it's a longer, more steady breath. And we've got that same sense on both the inhale and the exhale. So you might feel a little like Darth Vader, or you might feel like it sounds a little bit like the ocean, the way the waves come up onto the shore and then go back out again. It's creating a little rushing sound. Literally what's happening is we're slightly restricting the throat, but we don't want to clamp down or make it too hard of a restriction. It should still feel relaxed and easy. And now once we have this sensation of that, now we bring the lips together. The sound will become much softer, but you should still be able to hear it for yourself. Not only the sensation, but the sound of the breath should give you a sense of relaxation and ease. So it should feel comfortable, natural, yet slightly more controlled than just our day-to-day breath. So we're just going to take another moment here just to practice the breath, get used to it, and then finally see if you can find a rhythm for it. So instead of it being sort of inconsistent, some breaths are long, some breaths are short, some breaths are deep, some might have pauses between them. We're going to try to find an even rhythm. So the inhales and exhales last the same amount of time and there's no pause from breath to breath. Take another moment here. Now, we want to start to combine asana or poses with breath. So we're going to come to our feet and we're going to do the same asana sequence that we did in the A video of this series. So we're going to start standing and you can come to the top of your mat or face whatever direction you like. We're going to start in Tadasana. Big toes touch, heels slightly apart. You can bring your palms together. Now, on an inhale, and try to use that Ujjayi practice, reach the arms out and up. As you exhale, forward fold. Now inhale, take your fingers to your shins. Ardha Uttanasana, remember? Exhale, fold back to Uttanasana. Inhale, press the feet down, come all the way up to standing, reach the arms. Exhale, palms together in front of the heart. And we're going to do that again. Keep the breath flowing and let the movement of the body match the breath. Inhale. Exhale to fold. Inhale to lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reverse, come up. Exhale, palms together. And one more time, just to really get that rhythm in the body. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale, lift. Exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, reverse, come up. Exhale, back to Tadasana. Great. B is for balance. So we will look a little bit at some balance practice today. If you are worried about your balance, and the first one we're going to do is going to be a standing balance, find a wall or something you can be near so that if you need to put your hand out and catch yourself, you can do that. We're not really even going to do a standing balance pose per se today. We're just going to practice the idea of being able to balance on one foot. So we're going to start by standing on the right foot. And if this is challenging to you, maybe just lift your left heel and balance on those left toes. If you feel like you can go a little further, start to pick your left foot up off the floor. And some of you maybe even bringing your knee into your chest, hold onto the knee and see if you can stabilize yourself here standing in balance. And breathe. Keep the breath going. Focus on a point that's a little bit far away from you, a point that's not moving, and that will help you. And then let's just switch to the other leg. So put the foot down, the left foot down, and then try the right foot. One side might be easier for you to balance on than the other, so just notice if that's the case. Maybe just coming to your toes, just lifting the heel, but maybe seeing if you can lift the foot off the ground, and finally maybe seeing if you can reach around your shin and let yourself hold onto that leg. Gaze ahead. We balance with three things. The first is our inner ear, so our equilibrium is controlled there, and so it's sort of an internal sense of balance. The second is feeling the floor or the ground underneath us. When we take one foot off, it makes balance more challenging. But then the third thing is we balance by focusing our eyes. Go ahead and bring this foot down. And we're going to go ahead and come to a seat. And we're going to try a seated balance pose. And this is actually another B pose. This is boat pose. This is also, the Sanskrit for this is Navasana. Navasana means boat pose. So I talked a little bit about the gaze, and the gaze is going to help us keep the balance when we don't have enough on the floor to really feel stable just from that part. So here, we're going to take the hands behind the thighs. So the knees are bent, the feet are on the floor. We're going to take the hands behind the thighs, and we're just going to pull the shoulders back. So when we talked about shoulder alignment last time, we talked about the shoulders being able to pull apart or come together. So here you want to think of those shoulders drawing together and the heart coming a little forward, and then we're going to lean back. As we lean back, we might feel like we're starting to fall back and losing our balance a little bit. We're going to counterbalance by bringing the feet up off the floor. If you feel wobbly, it's normal, it's natural, do the best you can, but do look at one point, something not moving in front of you to help you with the balance. If you feel stable, maybe let go of the backs of the thighs, take the arms out, and balance in boat pose. Take the feet down. Go ahead and come back to a seat for a moment, and we're going to do one more. Hands behind the thighs, lean back, lift the heart. Try to keep your heart lifted, and then see if you can float the feet off the floor. So we're balancing on our sit bones or our tailbone here. Let the arms reach out if you can. So we have to have an even amount of weight on either side. So the upper body and the legs are trying to be balanced enough, want a little bit of some, a little bit of the other, balancing each other out. Go ahead and take those feet back to the floor, and let's come back to a seat. We're going to do another quick breathing practice, or pranayama, that is a balancing practice. And this is called alternate nostril breathing. So it might feel a little weird. Give it a try, see what you think of it. But there are several pranayama practices that come up in yoga, so I just wanted to show them to you so that you are at least familiar with the idea of them. So for this practice, you're going to take your right hand and bring the first two fingers to the base of your thumb. We're going to use the thumb to close our right nostril, and then the ring finger and the pinky finger to close the left nostril. But we're only going to do one nostril at a time, alternate nostril breathing. So the first thing we would do is we would pinch close the right nostril and inhale through the left one. And then we're going to pinch the left one and exhale through the right. And then we inhale again through the right. Pinch the right nostril and exhale through the left. And that is one whole round. So we're going to do 2 rounds now. And you might notice it clears your sinuses a little bit. It is a balancing practice in that we are trying to, balance from left to right. So a little bit of one side, a little bit of the other. If you want, you can close your eyes as you practice this. And like I said, we're just going to do a couple of rounds here. See how it goes. So again, thumb and first finger and second finger at the base of your thumb. And we're going to use a thumb and then the ring finger and pinky finger to the other side. So starting with the right nostril closed. This one round. And take your hand off, back to your knee, and see if you can come back to your Ujjayi breath. This breathing practice should also be calming, so it may have felt a little strange, but see what you're feeling now like. And we shall move on. B is for backbend. We're going to do a couple of back bends today, and it might seem like that would be a much more advanced practice, but there are several really basic back bends that we can get started on now. Back bends can be really therapeutic for your spine. They can feel good. They can also be a little challenging and invigorating. Like always, we don't want to feel like we're hurting ourselves, so no pain. Do the best you can here. Let's go ahead and come to our belly. We're going to start with bow pose. So again, another B. Bow is, the Sanskrit for this is Dhanurasana, which means bow pose. We're going to start with one side and then the other. So you can kind of prop yourself up with your forearms here on your belly so your chest is lifted. And then you're going to just take your left leg and kind of cross it at a diagonal across your mat. And you're going to bend the right knee. Do the best you can. See if you can reach back with your right hand for the foot. Now, if you have a hard time reaching your foot, you could, wrap something around that foot and grab onto it. But do the best you can here. And if you can't reach your feet, you could just stay propped up. Even just being propped up here is a little bit of a back bend. If you can reach your foot, you're going to pull your heel away from the hip. And notice as you do this, your right shoulder goes back. And we start to feel a little like a bow, like your arm is the bow string. Let your gaze remain forward. Stay with your breath. And let your foot pull back to stretch your arm long and draw your shoulder back. And you should feel this stretch across your chest. Let's switch sides. So take the right hand now to the ground, and this is just here to prop you up. Bend your left knee, reach back with your left hand for the foot, and then same thing. So you're pulling the heel away from the hip. So the heel, and it may not be that close, right? You might have to really reach for your foot, but then you're gonna pull the heel back like you're trying almost to put your foot, like you're trying to extend your leg back to the floor, but it's pulling the shoulder back with you. Gaze up and forward and breathe. Back bends are also stretches for the front of the body, so you should feel a little bit of both. A little bit of stretching in the upper back area and a little bit of stretching across the chest and shoulder. And then go ahead and let that go. Come down to the floor. Take your forehead or an ear to the ground. Now we're going to try to do that with both legs. So this is going to be the full pose. Again, if it's difficult for you to reach your feet, you could go back to one foot at a time, or you could just prop yourself up on your forearms and take a small back bend here, relaxing the legs completely behind you. So if you're able to grab both feet, you're going to be on your belly, you're going to bend your knees. The knees should be hip, shoulder distance apart, but not wide, so don't let them go as wide as your mat. Reach for the feet, and then both together. Lift your shoulders. Bring your shoulder blades onto your back. So remember, that's part of our alignment practice. We're moving the shoulder blades together on our back. And then start to pull the heels away from the hips. Let the arms get long. Let the shoulders move back. Feel a stretch across the chest. And breathe here. So see if you can come back to that Ujjayi breathing practice so that you're smoothly and steadily breathing. If you're feeling a little bit more like challenging yourself, let the thighs come up off the floor. But if that's too much, keep them down. Gaze is forward, so don't drop the head all the way back. It's a little bit more of a natural curve of the spine, and the neck just continues that curve. Let yourself lower down, forehead or an ear to the floor. Okay, so let's just push ourselves up to hands and knees here. And we're going to do one more back bend actually on our back. And this is another B. This is going to be bridge pose. So let's go ahead and come down to the floor. And before we go into the full bridge pose, we're going to do a little bit of flowing with the breath here. So the alignment, once we get to the floor, is we want the heels slightly away from the hips. So for me, if I extend my arms along the side of my body, I can just barely graze my heels with my fingertips. My knees are over my ankles, and we want the feet to be about hip distance apart, and then the knees are hip distance apart so that everything is really aligned with the hips. And then from here, we're gonna lift the hips. So the first thing that happens is we tuck the tailbone and then start to roll up through the spine. Moving the spine, the hips up, roll through the spine. At the same time, if you want, you can lift the arms and reach them up and overhead. And we're gonna do this with the breath. So let yourself follow. Now coming back, if you can, to that Ujjayi breath that we did at the very beginning. Press the feet down. Inhale, roll up, reaching the arms, rolling all the way to the tops of the shoulders. Exhale, roll down through the spine. Inhale, push down, roll up. You're pushing the feet down, and that is how you're able to lift up off the floor. Exhale, roll down through that spine. This should feel pretty good, actually. If it's causing you pain, find a way to make it a little simpler, a little easier. You don't have to come up as high, but if it feels good, let yourself really explore this range of motion. Now, this last time, we're gonna come on up. We're gonna push down with the feet and try to lift the hips. The arms are up overhead. Keep the hips lifted. See if you can bring the arms back to the sides. Bend your elbows. Fingers point up. Push your upper arms down. Push your feet down. And see if you can lift the hips higher. And move your chest like towards your chin, towards your nose. So as opposed to having this be like ramp pose where we feel like we're just a diagonal from shoulders to knees, we want to create like a bulge, a nice rounding, so that we're creating that bridge shape. So that something, you know, if somebody wanted to walk underneath, there's space. We're creating space under the body. Push down to lift up. And then when you're ready to come out, slowly roll your spine back to the floor. Take your time coming down. And we're gonna do one more. So we're gonna push the feet into the floor, and this time we're not gonna roll up and down, we're just gonna move into it. So you can do the same thing, pushing the upper arms down into the ground to lift the hips up. If your shoulders are open and you wanna try this, take the arms on the floor, roll a little to your left shoulder and try to snuggle your right shoulder underneath you and move the arm underneath your back. And then roll to your right shoulder and do the same thing with the left. See if you can get your hands together and maybe you can clasp your fingers together. And that's just going to give you a little bit more capability to come up. You're really on your upper arms rather than your upper back. Knees are still over ankles. Make sure you're breathing. And then get the shoulders out of the way. Lower your spine down and try to lower it down one vertebra. So the vertebrae are the joints of our spine. One at a time. Lower down. Come all the way down. All right. Let's come back up to sitting. So we're going to do another breathing practice here. So come back to your Sukhasana pose. Take the hands to the knees. And we're going to do a little bit of Kapalabhati, which is also breath of fire. And I'm just going to show you. This one comes up sometimes in practices. And it's a quick, sharp in and out. So this is less relaxing and more invigorating and stimulating of a breath. So we breathe in and out through the nose. And basically the emphasis is on the exhale through the nose. The inhale is passive, but it will start to happen fast just to compensate for the breath as we exhale. So I'll show you about 5, and then we'll try to do 10 all together. So it's a little something like this. So you're really just pressing air out through your nose. Again, this could be clearing for your sinuses. So if you need a Kleenex nearby, go ahead and get that. We're going to try to just do 10 in a row, so bring your hands to your knees, lift and lengthen your spine. You can close your eyes if you like, and we're going to do 10 breaths of fire. And then let yourself come back to natural breath. We're going to do one more round of that. Notice what happens. So generally what happens is your belly starts to be like the bellows to push that air out. You might not notice that today, but at some point you may begin to notice that the way in which your body is pressing the air so quickly out of the nostrils is right from the belly, or like the diaphragm is really pushing up to shoot the air out. So we're gonna do one more round, 10 breaths. And then go ahead and come back to center and return to a natural breath. And I'm just going to introduce you to 2 more yoga breathing practices. Probably you won't see these terribly often, but one is called lion's breath, and it's a really wide-eyed, tongue out of the mouth kind of pose. You can take your hands, the backs of the hands to the knees, and open your fingers wide, and you would breathe in. And then just breathe out like a roar. And then the other one is a cooling breath, which is done with a rolled tongue. If you can roll your tongue, and you breathe in and out through the rolled tongue, a little like this. And literally this practice, because your tongue is rolled, it cools the air as you draw it into the body. So those are the breathing practices we're going to talk about today. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to come to Shavasana. So again, as I mentioned, this really does complete all yoga practices. So come to your back into corpse pose. Extend the legs. Maybe lift your chest and tuck your shoulders underneath you so that it's nice and, flat back there. You can really rest. Take the arms out slightly away from the hips. Close the eyes. Once you get to Shavasana, your breath can relax. So you no longer work with the Ujjayi breath in Shavasana. You let it go. Just let the air fall in and out naturally. However, to keep you focused, see if you can continue to notice the breath, even though you're not controlling it at all. And that in and of itself can be a challenge, because once we bring our awareness to something, we tend to want to control it. See if you can just stay in stillness and just notice, passively notice your breath for a few moments. And then feel free to stay in Shavasana for a couple more minutes. But I'm going to come back up and sit to close my practice with you. Practices are often closed with palms together in front of the heart. And then the term that we close with is one you've probably heard a million times, or maybe never, so I will explain it to you. This term means the light or the divine in me recognizes and honors the light or the divine in you, and the term is simply Namaste. So I'll close with you by bowing forward and saying Namaste. Yay! Thanks again so much for joining me. Again, you can find the ABC series continued on Thursdays, and the next one in the series is going to be C is for cat cow. Be sure to subscribe and hit your notification bell so you know when that video shows up. Take care.